Yeah.
that he wasn't allowed to stay around them. It was
Yeah,
it was weird.
I didn't find this out until, let's see, not this past Christmas, but the Christmas
Hmm.
prior when we were scheduled to stay there too.
Hmm.
And I was like, we're driving up, and I'm like, we get the call. It's like, you can't. Like, what do you mean? This is like, we're literally on the way. And he was really disappointed, obviously, because we were married. And so that kind of negated the whole like, it's a sin thing, because that's what I thought initially when we had made and had to ask.
I thought too.
Um,
Also, thought maybe
yeah,
it was. We're
I
not
thought it
married. We
was
can't.
I thought it was religion related, and I was very respectful of being Mormon for that short period of time and their religion. Um, I later found out, like last summer, when I had called his dad because it's the last thing I ever wanted to do. And you know what? It's not that we don't get along. It's just I don't understand him at all. And I'm so like empathetic and warm, and I give hugs. I don't shake hands. And, like
Yeah,
that's just me.
there was no love and nurture that came from him.
Yeah, like I just didn't get that vibe, and I also felt like very, very judged right off the bat. So when I did decide to call him, I was really information seeking, like not doing anything like from a daughter-in-law perspective. But um, I had just point blank asked that, and he had let me know that like at some point when Dick and his first wife were at a family function, um, everybody was there, and I don't know. Maybe they're playing cards. Yeah, I think they were playing cards,
Hmm.
and Dick lost or something that he didn't like, and he almost like Real Housewives of New Jersey basically almost flipped the table and like went insane, and it was yelling at baby mama, all this stuff, and he very much scared his stepmom and the sisters. And so from that point, that's at least what I remember from the conversation, but that was why. It's because you scare the girls,
Yeah,
women in my house.
and yes, and the explosiveness is
Yeah.
definitely a big part of one of the things I that came to light that I didn't think was who he was, but it was actually a big part of like who he is, and that is very scary. It's very scary to be around people like that.
Absolutely. What about
Hmm.
your parents? So what? Oh, and did you ever get to meet his mom?
No, I didn't. No, it was he always like he kind of talked. I don't want to say backhanded about his mom,
Hmm.
but he blamed his mom a lot for. I feel like the him being traumatized from their separation and
Yeah.
all of that, you know. But it seemed like she was much more warm to him compared to his father, so it kind of surprised me that he did that. But I mean, my parents were together, have been together. I have like full siblings and stuff like that. We've been fortunate at least to have like a close family. Every family has their thing, right? Don't get me wrong, we have our
Hmm.
things, but I haven't been around that. There wasn't, violence, explosion, divorce, whatever. So I I wasn't familiar. I wasn't really familiar. Just like see, I see it from like friends, but seeing like their dynamic was a little interesting. But it was, it seemed like he really wanted to have the relationship with his dad, and his mom was. Yeah, I didn't love that he had. I'm like, who talks about your mama like that? You know?
Yeah, it's very strange. It wasn't until the very, very like the tail end of our relationship that I finally like got to beat into his head like, hey, it was her first time being a mom. It was her first time being a wife. You know that she was this old and a human, right? Like you give her all of this, she had all this power over the way the course of your brother and your sister's life would go, when in reality she was just doing her absolute best. And also you never talk about how she felt in the relationship with her husband and all of that. So they have a good they had a good relationship when I was in the picture, and I'd like to think that that was because of me. I also did not like when he would say just point blank like my mother was lazy and she never did anything, and she was basically like a country club socialite but also didn't work, and she would just redecorate, and I was like, okay,
That's
how
the
did she
same.
do that, like I
Yeah.
don't, because maybe somewhere part of me was like, we talked about that being me one day, and now you're talking like, are you going to talk shit about You know what I mean?
100%.
That's,
Yes, same, exactly. Because same. I'm
yeah.
like you want me to be, a Susie homemaker, and I'm happy to do that.
Hmm.
Um, Given that you're also the man you said you were, because that's
Hmm.
part of the relationship.
Yeah.
And that's some things that we got into. I started feeling really upset and a little betrayed by it. It's what's really started to question the relationship initially. Um, Even aside from the information I ended up finding out later, but it was like, I am, making all of our meals. We're sitting at the table, like, uh, we were having, we were having sex all the time. That was never an issue. So I
How many
really felt like
times
I
a
was.
day? Just because I think it varies between everybody.
It was like up to 5 or 6 times a day, but
Right.
sometimes it's one or two. But like 2 or 3 is not weird.
Yeah, not
Yeah,
at all.
yeah.
And so that would definitely lead you to not ever believe or question sexuality
Hmm.
because you were experiencing it firsthand. I mean, later on, you're like, oh, okay, maybe.
Like, yeah, like for me, like yes and no, because there's a lot more bisexual people than we think,
Yeah.
and I think that that means it doesn't mean that they're going to be good or bad with one gender versus the other. Also,
Yeah. Agreed.
and my best friend's gay. Like I've always had gay friends, the whole life, guys, girls, whatever. So some of that to me was a little, I didn't think anything of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, but you're right. You're like, well, your dick works still, so why,
Yeah.
like all the time? So
I know
like, why
my
would this be an
man.
issue?
I know him.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you would make dinner and cook, would he do the dishes? Would he bring his plate to the sink?
Nothing, nothing actually. And this is during a lot of lockdown time too. Initially, where this happened,
Hmm.
he played a lot of video games, and initially that didn't really bother me because like we didn't have a lot we could do. We work out inside, trying to figure out stuff,
Hmm.
but also, I was playing my role as the woman I was happy to be in the relationship, thinking, like, expecting, and thinking that he was going to play the role as the man, and so I wasn't gonna. And I was doing our laundry, all like those things. None of that bothered me in a relationship, in a proper relationship,
Yeah.
but the relationship wasn't proper. And so I wasn't being taken care of while I was really giving my whole heart and being the person that I said that I was, because that is who I am. And at least who I wanted to be with him.
Hmm.
And so, initially. And so it was really hurting me a lot seeing him not be that person he said he was. And then on top of, like, when we had conversations, like my lease was coming up, he's like, he would initiate a lot of these conversations too. Would be like, oh, like, what do what else do you owe on your lease? He's like, what's the last 2 months? He's like, I want to make sure I get it taken care of. And he's like, this is how much, I was like, how much do you think the movie is going to be? I'm like, it's going to be this and that. And he's like, okay, great, I got it. Like, don't worry about it.
Hmm.
And then when it was time to take care of those things, there would be something that would come up, or he would be kind of aggressive about me asking, or there would be all these things that kept happening, or he's like take care of it, I'll get you back,
Oh,
that kind of stuff, or he would pay for like a small thing, but it was like, oh wait, what about like all these other things that were supposed to be taken care of, and like the stress and some debt was compiling, and that was like really, that's difficult. Like, I don't like, nobody likes it, but it was very difficult to be with someone who I was trying to trust to do what they said they would do as a man, and then it be like the opposite. And then also, I didn't want to look like an asshole for being like, hey, like, why aren't you paying for these things that you said that you would do? And I didn't want to be like, oh, like leaving him because he wasn't. Because I was like, this was a weird and difficult time. Like, I'm trying to be, understanding, and all of that. And I had some of this actually is a good transition into something, a fight that I wanted to notate. But it was more like he was getting kind of aggressive about me wanting to get him, to pay for stuff. I was like, well, I'm taking care of these things. Like, you don't really want me doing this online work. I obviously, like, love it. It was doing, like, selling the content and all that stuff, but which he initially had no problems with.
hmm.
But I remember we were over at Matt's house on May 9th. I remember this. And going over to watch a UFC fight, and that was all fine. And I was trying to find ways to, like, trying to make more money because I was getting really stressed. Like, not being like, I was basically living. I didn't move my stuff down here yet, but
Hmm.
I was basically living with him, and things were not getting taken care of. It was very difficult. I had someone helping me manage my online platforms and stuff too, and it was like, hey, I have this other site you can start doing. They were helping me with it, And then part of the element is like people pay to text you or have phone calls and that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And then he was like, "Hey, there's this person that wants to do a call with you, whatever." So I step out to go have this call, and I remember talking to this person. This person was so nice. It was such a good impression. It was very super PG. It was nothing weird. Not that it matters anyway. And I made like $500 or $600 in like 40 minutes, and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like I found a saving grace. It's gonna help get us through this time. I was so excited, so proud. I like went in. He's sitting with his friends. I went in to tell him. I was like, "Oh my god, guess what?" Like I told him I was like, "Mom, like he already knew that the site had come up, but I hadn't really been active on it yet."
Yeah.
And I was like, "I just had this call. I made like $500 or $600. Like I'm like this is such a relief." And then he was like, that was one of those times where he was the most like flipped to a different person. He's like, "You need to go." And I was like, "What? Like what do you mean?" He's like, "You wanted me to move back to Oregon. We got in a huge fight. We went outside." I'm like, what are you talking about?" You said I need to be able, you can't take care of me right now. Like, I was devastated. He said I was like a whore. He like went off. And this is one of those things where, he like runs away down the street.
Oh
So
my
he literally
God,
did that.
yes.
We're like fighting down the street. I'm hysterical, thinking that found like a saving grace to help during this time to help take care of my things while it's lockdown, like, right? He said that he's not able to work, he's not able to provide like the way he was before. He's really stressed out. And then I'm like, he's not able to take care of these things. He can't be responsible, whatever. And I was like, oh my God, I found something it's gonna hold us through until we see the end of this time. And that was really devastating, like super devastating for me. And because I was like heartbroken because he was really aggressive, really rude, like hostile. And I'm not accustomed to people never, and unfortunately, my parents are never like that. No one's
Yeah.
throwing, no one's screaming. Like, so it was really scary and really stressful. And I was so excited to share something that I thought was going to be good for us. And that
Well,
was a
yeah,
really
I was
difficult
gonna
thing.
just say, like I heard when you said you were like so excited, like the saving grace, you literally used the word us, right? Like
Yes.
you
Yeah.
could have said, "Hey, I could pay my bills," and I knew it. But even then it's like you're subliminally giving him a pass for not acting on his word by
Mm-hmm.
you looking for other sources, other streams of income, or you know what I mean?
Yes.
And I think
Yeah.
again, there's just character attestation because I remember being there. And I remember any time that I mean what you did was you knocked his ego down, which it deserves to be fucking like literally stomped on the ground because it's just
Sure.
so ridiculously big. But if we ever made ourselves seem more important or more successful or smarter, oh God, that is the one that really gets him.
Yeah. That's
He
he gets,
loses it.
especially when it's something that threatens, I think, his control.
Hmm.
And now when I'm out of it, I see that it was in every one of those moments. It's he became like when I was joyous, or like I don't want to say joyous, like when I was happy, he was unhappy. That's not the case, but it would be something that would almost be like threatening to his control or my involvement, where it's like he's my life.
Hmm.
It would be these other things where I have like more financial independence when he was obviously trying to steer me away from that, and like do things I enjoy. I I went after I ended up, so we had a big fight. It was like I was like, well, what are we gonna do? My lease is supposed to be up. Are we gonna be together? Are you gonna be the man you said you're going to be? Are you can't talk to me like this ever again. It's not an option.
Yeah.
You're hostile. You're rude. You're like aggressive. I couldn't believe it. Like this was not the person that said that like in the very beginning where he was like, he would do anything to be with you.
Right.
Like he's like, I want to love you for who you are. And he's like, you were my soulmate, all these things. My soulmate would never talk to me like this.
Yeah.
One of the fights we had, he reeled back on his harshness. He said because it was a retrograde. And I was like, a Mercury retrograde. I would like never thought much of astrology at the time. And I was like, that's so weird. But
Oh
I
my
was like, you know
gosh.
what? It's making this fight end right now, and it was getting uncomfortable. So I was like, okay, like,
Yeah, I hear you.
yeah, you
Okay.
know.
Zodiac
Did you
killer.
ever touch any of that stuff? Making like that was that. Is it just me that he tried to use astrology on when that
He
wasn't my thing?
he tries to use so right now the big I say right now he's real big into numerology. That's his thing.
Yeah.
You know, basically, he's real big on anything that takes accountability away from the fact that his actions caused what is happening in the moment. So, whatever that may be, it's a fucking air pressure.
Hmm.
Like it doesn't even matter. He always has, there has to be an excuse for that. Um, I, I was so enthralled. I missed like a bunch of chat questions. So I apologize. We're backtracking a
I
little
saw
bit.
them popping up. If we have some questions, let's hit some questions. And
Yeah,
then
let's do,
I know we
okay.
haven't even talked about me moving there yet. So I'll do that next if it
So
makes sense.
was he leaving the house, making it seem like he was busy or going to work? And did you have his location? Did he share his location as a good faith?
No, it never had, like, I never felt like that was an issue. I thought there was a lot of transparency.
Hmm.
And we spent a lot of time together. We were together all the time.
Yeah.
We went to the gym. Initially, we were going to the gym together a lot. He would leave. He was going to train a client. And so there were times that he would just be, gone for a few hours on that. And I had like a very much gym bodybuilding life in the past.
Hmm.
So if he went to the gym for 3 hours, I was like, been there,
Yeah.
didn't think much of it. And he would train Matt. That was a person he was always hanging out with and spending time with. And then sometimes he would jump up and be like, oh, I'm going to Matt's or something. I was like, okay, it's your best friend,
Hmm.
I guess. But their dynamic was so weird. Like if a couple would fight, like they would be like that. I was like,
Yeah.
why are you guys like calling and blocking each other and harassing each other and being like, ah, oh, it's Matt again, like that
Also,
kind of
so
stuff.
much of Dick just talked so much shit about him.
So much.
And
I'm
and
like,
he
well, that's
says that he's his
that was
best
a red flag.
friend.
Yes, I'm like I've never talked about any of my friends, much less my best friends, about these like this. You're like and he would even comment on him being gay a little bit. He started like being a little derogatory about that. And I did not like that.
Super,
I
super
did not.
homophobic. He would say
Yeah.
things, about Matt's appearance. He would say things about his financial status. He would say things about just a lot. His mental acuity, and he also would just say the most homophobic slurs of all time when talking to him, even sometimes to his face, which
Hmm.
I think that Matt tended to like ha 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 it off, but I don't think that he knew that he was saying it in the privacy of our own home all the time too.
Yeah.
So that was, do you know the nature of their relationship, the truth of how, I mean, they're not just friends.
Yes, I ended up finding out more later.
Later.
That's what. Yeah, I didn't know. Initially, I had no idea. As far as I knew, he was paying him for training. I didn't find out until about any of that dynamic with him or anyone really. I got suspicious. Like I was suspicious like the month or 6 weeks before I left him.
Hmm.
Um, but then it was like it all came out over a period of like 2 days. I was like, oh shit! And then I made my jump ship. Yeah,
Yeah, that was always a real big like that realization for me. I always had thought it, but I think that I didn't want to believe it. I like repressed it every single time. I was like, there's why is he with him all the time? And just all of these weird questions that I had, I made excuses for him mentally, and then but just being around him so much, and I'm sure as you were too, it was
yeah.
really fucking hurtful, almost embarrassing, almost, I don't know, it was kind of like they enjoyed it, I think.
Hmm.
I think that they enjoyed having that little secret that,
I 100% think so.
yeah,
I think they loved kind of like someone being the butt of the joke of not knowing.
always.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and a reason I wasn't as at that point suspicious is like Dick is obsessed with riches.
Oh,
Like if you're a billionaire, if you have this car, if you have this lifestyle, there's God, there's his dad, and there's other rich men.
God. Hmm.
Those are that's like his tier of priorities. I feel like. And so I think that he would tolerate, I think that's what I thought at the time, is that he would tolerate like the things he didn't like about Matt or people, whatever, because he wanted to be in that circle
Yeah.
of wealth and be that person. Dude, after I had moved there, he got to a point, this was one of my breaking points with this guy is just too far. Um, he was trying so desperately to get rich. He decided wasn't going to eat, we weren't going to eat vegetables and fruit anymore. And we were just going to eat powder because it was cheaper, because he was trying to save all his money. And I was like, oh my God. I like FaceTime my best friend after. I was like, you're never going to believe what just happened. I'm like, I don't, like, I was like, I can't do this.
You
Like,
ain't gonna
this can't be real
you
life.
ain't gonna
He's
nickel
having
and
an
dime
episode.
your way into being a billionaire, my guy. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh,
Maybe you need a job, like, um,
did you start to resent him like early on because he wasn't like living up to your expectations or what he laid himself
definitely, it
out?
was more, yeah, it was definitely, it was like, it was hurtful, because I felt, so so we had this big, this big conversation. I'm like, hey, I'm supposed to be moving down here, or my lease is up, so I'm either renewing and I'm staying home without you, or it's like, or you're going to be the man, and we're going to have the relationship
Hmm.
that we're properly, communicated that we wanted, and then you're not going to talk to me the way you talk to me when we've had conversation, arguments. Like, if I'm super peaceful, when I have conversations, I think I articulate pretty well, um, but
I
the
agree.
hostility, and thank you, and the explosiveness, I can't do that. Violence, especially with men, scares me. It's just it, especially when doing it to women. Like, what do you think? Like, what am I gonna do?
Right.
Like, why? Like, you have to threaten me physically or be intimidating. Like, if you just tell me how you feel, it works out every time.
So
With
would
me.
you
So,
consider yourself two-prong question?
mhm.
Would you consider yourself a diffuser as part, in terms of like when getting into an altercation with him? And also, do you remember like what the first, I guess, like emotionally or verbal abusive situation was? Was it that time when you had found a way to pay your bills?
That was the first. Yeah, there was one smaller fight before that, basically the same thing.
Hmm.
But yeah, that one on May 9th, that was devastating. Lots of explosion, the running down the street, the physically aggressive in your face, like that was I was like, what?
Hmm.
And I was just devastated because he's just like kind of yelling and ranting, and I'm like, I thought I just did a good thing, and I was so excited for us,
Hmm.
like that was that. But the first, like one of the really ones where I was like, I should probably just leave right now is
Hmm.
when the day we were going to move. I was going to move. But what was the first part of your question again? I feel like
Do
I
you
forgot
feel
it.
like, would you consider yourself a diffuser? So, like for
Uh,
me, I used to be very like hot-headed, and if you came at me, I had to one up you until I couldn't yell anymore, and I was a break things, throw the phone, throw everything kind of person. But with Dick,
yeah,
I was like, I'm gonna leave right now until you feel like you can talk like a grown up, almost in a
yeah,
condescending way, but yeah.
yeah. I developed a lot of those communication skills. I was never like hostile. I do have the capacity for like quick anger, but
Mhm.
I'm never taking it out on someone like that. It's more like if I'm defending somebody I care about,
Yeah.
or there's something unusual. It wouldn't be in a circumstance where it's like we're having an issue. I'm more of like, I get like sad.
Hmm.
Sometimes I cry when I'm just trying to communicate, but I'm like very empathetic. So I have like, it's like I'm just like, oh, like, and I want someone. One of the things I really have learned, and this was prior to that relationship, so I think this translated always in this relationship for the most part, because I was always feeling hurt when we were in those conversations, because he would say things super hurtful.
Like,
He'd call me a
give an
whore for stuff.
example. Yeah.
You call me a whore for like posting. You just can't be with someone like you. Like, you're not, obviously my soulmate would never do this. Like, all these things, and that was devastating for me, because I was like, I was that person. Like, I was like, oh, I found my person, and now my person is telling me I'm not.
Hmm.
Like, that was hard, and then him calling me a whore and stuff like that. When I'm like, my whole life, like I'm so like in love with you. Like, I was
Right.
like, we were planning our wedding, when like for in the first month, like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
So I would always communicate, like I would be like, okay, it would happen a lot in text too. So if I was gone or he was gone, especially I realize now, when he was up to no good, he would project a lot on me.
Oh,
So
totally.
he'd be like, oh, I don't know if I can trust you. You're a whore. I don't know if we can be together. And then I'm just like, I'm like at home. I'm like, what? So it was just like, I was. constantly being devastated and like emotionally hurt so bad. And he's like, I'm not going to take care of you, all these things. And then other times it's like, people are like, oh, if he would always say he's not going to, like, why would you still be there? But there would be other times where he's like, oh, especially when he started to gamble, which or was gambling, but I realized how much he was gambling when I
Hmm.
actually moved in. Where he'd be like, I'm gonna send you. He's like, we're gonna hit this, or I'm playing. He's like, I'm gonna send you 10 grand. You'll take care of all these things. Don't worry about it. Like, I want to show you how much I love you, like those kinds of things,
Oh
and was
God,
really
yeah.
weaponizing that, which was hard, super hard, and caused a lot of turmoil. Yeah. But when we were in these conversations, I was very much peacemaker, and it's interesting that you said something that you're like, "Hey, I'm gonna let you take a breath or whatever." I literally had texted him some things like that. There was one time after I moved in. So I did a lot of traditional modeling, so photo shoots, stuff like that. But during lockdown, that wasn't happening. Wasn't able to do any of that. Nobody was getting together really. I got booked for one once things started opening up in Chicago. I was going up there for a few days. But then I'm not a big group shoot person, but there was one being hosted like the week before, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna get my bearings. I haven't been able to shoot like professional content, like stuff on Instagram or my social media in a long time.
Mhm.
Really excited to do that. I miss doing it, and I'll be able to like get some of the dust off. It's been a
Yeah.
while since I had been doing it. I was at a shoot, thrilled, so excited, meeting new people because also it was lockdown. Like I didn't meet all these people yet in Vegas, and I
Right.
wanted to make friends. Like I met a couple of people. I met Matt, and Matt wasn't really a friend. He wasn't a friend, but I met other people like through them, and a girlfriend who has really helped me a lot, especially when I was like, hey, I think maybe I should leave this person. Should I keep trying? Like, is this my fault? These things. But he told me there while I was there, I had my one of my big panic attacks while I was away. It was like he said that I was. He's like, the like shoots like that. He's like, those are for whores. He's like, you're just like garbage. Like saying all these horrible things about me, and I was just like, what the fuck? I was like, no, like I'm not. Like he's like, and he was saying like, I don't want to be with you if you're doing these things. It was basically another thing where he was like, you need to stop doing. We talked later. I was like, hey, look, I was like, I can't do this right now. Obviously, you're really upset. I want to talk to you about it. Maybe we take a breather, whatever. And then I was supposed to go back 2 days in a row to shoot back to back. I did the one day and I couldn't come back. I was too stressed, too scared, too anxious.
Hmm.
I'm like profusely sweating, trying to pretend like I'm not freaking out while I'm there, trying to be professional and meet all these people,
Yeah.
that are from Vegas. We ended up talking later, and he said that I was like, again, whore for like, I stopped doing the one site that he said he didn't. He's like, the conversation went that he felt like he was sharing me is what he said. If I was going to be like entertaining or like I'd be like, oh, you're talking to these guys, but I'm not. I'm like, me and my manager are like texting people, and a lot of it's super normal.
Right.
And you were super fine, gung ho with me doing this. You love me for who I am, and like all these things. It was never an issue, and before, and he was always really supportive initially. So he's basically was like, he's like, I can't do these. I can't take care of you like this, while you're doing these things. And I was like, literally, I was like, so if I'm not, then you will. And he's like, yes.
Oof,
I was like, oh, well,
the
I was like, oh, then.
manipulation and coercion is
Mhm,
so strong, and
mhm.
just what a fucking hypocrite.
Yes, dude. Yes, like more than anything, that's what like really got me
Like,
was the hypocrisy of it,
oh my
and like in
God.
the financial abuse and the verbal abuse and the intimidation and just the way and emotional abuse that I was starting to feel over all of this time, the hostility and like he just knew what to say to really just like dig it in and just really hurt you, like tear you apart from the inside,
You said,
and
you
that was
said financial
difficult.
abuse, and I think that like people often associate that with someone, one or partner or the other partner basically is like controlling the money, right? And
Hmm.
it is that, but like when someone tells you that they got you and then their like head is in the clouds and you're a financially responsible person and you start feeling like scared and anxious and stomach ache when you have to even think about asking that person to follow up on their word. That was the
Yeah.
most my anxiety, and you could share how your anxiety manifests, but my anxiety is like heart throbbing in the ears, completely like hot flash, little tingly
Like
hands,
the
and I
sweating,
just can't think.
panic, heart racing.
I can't
Yeah.
think and I can't speak. And so when I get into the moment where I finally get the balls to like, I'm going to go up to you and say, you literally said you were going to pay the cell phone bill. Where the fuck is the cell phone bill? And then he immediately flips it and says something like, you're a whore, or why are you so broke? What did I get bait and switched? Like, I thought you went to law school.
That's something he would say to me too. When you said that, he would like, "Oh, you're broke. Oh, this." I'm like, but I was like,
Oh,
"What?"
yeah.
Like, I was like, "You like, how do you go from like I was making my own money, providing for myself, to like, it would be my honor and a privilege to provide for
Hmm.
you and be this person and have this life." To now I'm broke. I was like, no, no, like you told me, like this is what you want, like it not wanting me to be broke, but that was never in the plan,
It was
based on what you
it's
said you wanted.
conditional, you know? It's like, but that's
Yeah,
not what the agreement was. You know, it's like we're
yeah,
soulmates, unconditional love. I love you
yeah,
for everything that you've been, everything you're gonna be, who you are right now, all the shit. And then it's like, oh, I'm sorry, you see this? Oh, you can't have it. And that doesn't
mm-hmm.
feel good because you know what it makes you it made me feel like I was a girl, and it made me
Yeah,
feel stupid. And he
yeah,
did a really good job at making me feel that way when I know that I'm infinitely smarter than that man could ever be. So you know
yes,
what I mean? Like it's just and so when you
100%.
were saying that, I was like, I felt it because I'm like, God, I just those moments where you almost like your brain doesn't work and you can't argue for yourself because you're so fucking codependent and trauma bonded and
Yes.
all the shit. Like, ugh, so sorry you
Yeah,
had to go
it's
through that.
like where you feel so small, and like it's like where it's like I usually can communicate really well and be super reasonable and like hear the other side,
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, well, let's find a compromise, right? But when it was, especially in those moments, it's like I have no words.
Yep.
And if he says something, I'm like, that's like, I'm just like, okay, you know, and it would take me sometimes out, it would take hours, sometimes days to like build up the courage or the balls, like you're saying, to have the conversation, just to ask him to do, like, hey, like, are you going to do what you actually said you were going to do?
Hmm.
Why would
Also,
that shouldn't be so scary.
you said something too that I totally, I relate to. I, I was so in love with him, okay? And I never wanted to upset him when I would speak to him after I realized he had like a hair trigger. So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times because I felt so strongly about him, I would cry for like if it's a serious but good conversation, I was crying. If it was like I'm uncomfortable because you owe me money, or also if it's like I don't have any fucking money because you gambled it all away, um, we need groceries, I would cry. And I thought that I never was like chastised for that ever. I actually was like, yeah, that means I'm emotional and good. And he
Yeah.
used to be like, your emotions are not mine to carry. They're too heavy and you need to get it together.
He would often say, like, he's like, you are not my responsibility, like, to any capacity. And I'm just what?
And you're like, this is a fucking surprise
Right?
to
Like,
me.
yes, no, like, why? He'd make you feel like like I was the idiot. Like, I'm like, what you're, it's okay if your partner is supposed to be supportive of you and love you and take care of you in a lot of different ways, you know, and respectful, but he makes you, like, if that had happened, you know, day one, never ever would we have gotten here, right?
Hmm.
If I had seen any of that, but like this is authentic him, unfortunately, as
I just thought of
people like
something
that.
that I don't even think that I've ever mentioned this in the podcast, but again, it's like one of those things that happened. Um, I did he ever say to you anything along the lines of like the way he prioritized himself and you and God and the order? And like, did he ever like if I said something like, "Hey, like you're my person, you're my main priority," he would be like, "Wrong." Like, uh-uh.
Mm-hmm.
He's like,
The way he
you're
the way
not
you just said
mine."
that is like, mm-hmm.
Right? Doesn't it? It's like he would be like, I'm like, "Am I not your number one priority?" He's like, "Fuck no."
Mm-hmm.
Number two?
Yeah, he was
No.
his first priority.
He would say, "God, myself, my family, then you."
Mm-hmm.
And he would
Mm-hmm.
beat that shit into my head every time I would say that he was my main priority. I was saying that in a loving way. And he would be like, "Stop. Why are you doing that? You're not mine."
Yes, it's like the way, yeah, where that makes you feel even, is that not devastating?
It was
Right? Because
super
you're like, whoa,
devastating, yeah.
I committed my life to you, and you're supposed to be like my husband at some point, right?
Hmm.
And then like my person, my soulmate, says that like it says those things. Like how is this possible? So I question everything, and I'm in so much hurt in the moment. It's like I don't really know what to say.
It's again one
I'm
of
just
those
like
things where it's like
devastated.
you don't know who you are because
Yeah.
you are so, it's like y- you're starved. You're just like
Mhm.
starved of like actual affection and love. And so you want to make this person happy. And I know for me is that I really started being like, well, maybe I'm like, I don't know how to make him not my main priority. And then I started feeling like there was something wrong with me that I couldn't prioritize myself. And I know that not that there's anything wrong with me. I know that I'm other centered and I'm a giver and all of these things, anxious attachment style, whatever the fuck you want to say. But I didn't need somebody to weaponize that part of me. I needed someone to like be like, wow, these bags are heavy, but like we got it.
Yeah, it's part
Mm.
of like being the man and being the leader. It's like providing the safe space and leading your family, right? Which includes your person.
Hmm.
So that wasn't. So then there's a lot of blame. You're like, what did I do to deserve this? You know,
Oh yeah,
there
internalizing.
was a lot of like, I'm like, and I was really trying to like, I'm not even trying. I was just boom, Susie Homemaker right away because that was the role I was happy to sign up for because this was my person, and he said he was going to be, my dream man also.
Hmm.
So it was so crazy. So like, I keep using the word devastating, but that's how it was. Like every time one of these things happened, or because he would be on that flip side of being like the loving, enamoring, like singing to you, caressing you, like just where you feel like you are just like, wow, this person really loves me,
Hmm.
But then there'd be that 180 like other person that comes out in this fight or argue or tiff where I always come to heart when I have something I have to talk about. I'm like, hey, I'm soft. This is a place of love. And I'm never asking for anything absurd, right? Or
Yeah.
it's like, hey, like I didn't like this, or what is this, or how are we going to handle this? And that's how I come at these things. And the hostility, I feel like it got worse and worse. But when I was actually moving up, so you're asking if he helped pay for, he moved me, blah blah blah. So we had a conversation right before that if he was going to start, taking care of some of those things, because I'm literally transplanting my life,
Hmm.
giving up everything that I have there. So he did pay for one part of it. He was supposed to pay for the move, so he booked the U-Haul. But when it came to towing my car, he's like, "Yeah, I'm not paying for that." I was like, "What?" Like, I don't have like you said you're going to move me, and you told everyone you're moving me, and I don't. I just stopped this site that I was making us money because you said you're going to take care of it. What do you mean? And so then I'm like, boom, more money on the credit card, And so I'm like, well, he already paid for this. Like what? So things like that would happen, and that was tough. When we were driving up, we stopped in Reno because we drove for like 8 hours, like 5 o'clock in the morning. Worst drive of my life. Never doing
Hmm.
it again. Um, and this was one of the times where I was like, so when you would just have casual conversation with somebody and you point out things, you're like curious about life. That was one of these comments I was having. I think I was asking something. We're walking up. I'm like, they had like maybe some artificial I don't know. I don't know. It was like plant, but it was actual plants because there was like a water system. But I asked him like, oh, like how do you think that works? And he immediately he's like, why would I give a fuck about that? Like hostile. He's like, I don't fucking know. Like screaming at me as we're walking up to the hotel. When I just had the most lighthearted question, like, oh, do you think how do you think that works? Just curious. And I was like so taken back. I was like, what?
Out of nowhere. Like,
Like literally nowhere. Everything was like we were tired. It was early, but it was just like I was just like having a random like you would talk to like, your best friend like, oh, that's weird. Like how does that work? Like just same thing, right?
you know what
But
I
it was
would say?
hostile.
I would say he
Closer.
probably lost money.
Yeah. Or he didn't know. And he doesn't like to
Yeah,
look
yeah, that's
stupid.
true. Yeah. He didn't know, and so
you
he
know?
didn't, yeah, he couldn't think of a lie fast enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So anything that I think that gave him where he looked bad. But yes, a lot of times there would be the hostility that coincided with the losses. And I learned that more after I officially moved down there because then we were together all the time.
Hmm.
So I saw it more and he was placing bets and like he had to go to like CD casinos, whatever, to place these bets because for some reason he wasn't able to do some of them online at certain platforms, and then it was later. It was just
Did it,
some of the
what,
most unusual things I've seen.
so with the gambling thing, um, I guess like I think that when you realize that someone's born and raised in Las Vegas, you kind of make this assumption that they've gambled before. Maybe it's incorrect, but that's
Yeah.
what I think the masses would do. But did he ever say like, I really enjoy gambling, or I do it a lot, or something like, I've lost $1.2 million in gambling in my life?
Definitely not the latter. He never said how much he lost, but he said how good he was at certain parts of it. And it wasn't necessarily at first. Like he would do it a little bit. So I thought like I know some people gamble casually. I didn't know like
Me
that's
neither.
what he did,
Yeah.
right? So there'd be times he'd kind of pop in and he kind of hit it. I think that so maybe there was times too where he's training, but really he's just go gambling, or he's hanging out with Matt and they would go play blackjack or whatever,
Mhm.
and there'd be times where he would be good. There'd be times he would just be a miserable prick, and it was, if there was if we had anything we had to talk about around then, it was super explosive. Like actually, once I had actually moved my stuff here. A lot of his friends came to help me move in, which was super nice. We moved into a different unit
Mhm.
of the same appointment, and also I want to know after I tell this part, we should check some questions. So I know that we talked a lot of different things, and I don't want to get so
Yeah,
far away
I'll look.
from some of the questions.
I think
But
I think we hit all of them. I kind of like weaved
did
them
okay,
in. There's two, but we'll get to those. We'll get to those after you tell this part.
okay, yeah. See, because I can't see, I just see a couple
Yeah,
notifications.
like
I was like,
popping up.
I hope we're not getting so far away from the
No,
topic that I
we're
don't touch
good.
on. Okay, we're staying relative. Okay, so this was one of the first times I was more genuinely scared of who, like, if I thought this person might be a little dangerous. Um, the friends there was like two or three friend guys there helping us move, and moving is never fun, right? Nobody likes it,
Mm.
but he said something really like just mean. I don't know what it was exactly, and I was like, I can't acknowledge that because I can't believe he just spoke to me that way. I was like, I'm stepping away. I walked away, and then he screamed. He's like, hey, jumps off the truck, charges at me, like, where the fuck do you think you're going? And I'm like,
What?
I was like petrified. He's like, don't walk away from me when I'm talking to you. Like, I was so scared because that's like physically violent, intimidating, like talking to me. So like I was like, even when I think about it now, I'm like tense and like sweating. But
Hmm.
it's like I'm just like staring at him like this is it was embarrassing. Also, it's like his friends, they all stopped and like looked, but then just like minding their business, went back to like moving
I
stuff.
was
So I
gonna
don't know if
say,
it's
I'm like,
like
I wonder if that was very much prompted by their presence.
I don't know, and it might have been. It was the first time he had been like that,
Yeah.
and but it also was like, but it was coming from me where he always, I don't want to say always had control of me, but like I feel like he ended up always having a lot of control of situations that involved us.
Hmm.
And I think when I was like doing the opposite of what he wanted, maybe that was the repercussion. And I think that's a part that made me really nervous. And I was like, okay, this person just had the capacity to do that. Uh, and all of my stuff is getting moved in. What now? Do I drive back home? Like all of these things came into my mind. I'm like, this is crazy. So I think I stepped away in the bedroom. And I kind of cried for a minute because I was just like, it was traumatizing. Like someone talks to me like that, like I'm not used to that.
It's always one of those
Um,
moments that seem, like you were saying, like it was the day that you were, leaving Oregon and this happened, or it's the day you're moving in, and I
yes,
don't know if it's
pivotal
intentional,
moments every time.
but it's always at this one point where it seems like it's supposed to be the best day, so
Yeah.
happy, and then it goes not just opposite, but like completely fucking opposite and horrible. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that like you just described it, it's like we're arguing with ourselves in our head, and I should leave right now, but all of these buts. And that's,
I was kept compromising my boundaries, and that wasn't like me. I have
yeah.
strong boundaries otherwise, but in this relationship, it was this. It's like the slow build and breakdown. I think that they kept doing little things that chipped away at like my own I guess, own self respect,
Mhm.
or questioning myself or my identity, like my identity or what I'm okay with. But because it's like if some of these things happened initially or early on, it's like it would have been too big,
Yeah.
and had there been not enough things that I would have been less, I would have been less invested. But I was already so invested in this relationship, and like we already had these big talks that it was like I was almost justifying it, but it like I was so invested in here that I really wanted to see it work and
Hmm.
make sense, and I thought that he really did like love me, you know. But in these moments, I'm like, how does someone like that really loves me talk to me like this? I've never, this is so crazy,
Yeah, and
you know. And that was,
I think too, now that you say it that way and you talk about emotional investment, it's like
mm-hmm.
once you compromise your morals, values, self-respect for somebody and you recognize it, I think that each time you do that is an investment. Because if
Mm-hmm.
you continue to go, another month, maybe just one thing happened where you're like, I would normally have let that happen. Then you get to 6 months down the line and you're like, I have to leave. You're kind of like looking back at all those other times, like, why did I put up with that?
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So I've never really
Mm-hmm.
thought about it like that before until now. But I mean, there's so many different reasons why people stay when they know they should leave. And I think that that's one of the common things that I get asked all the time is like, Amanda, yeah, hindsight 2020 doesn't really, like, sorry, girl, like, this is all your fault. And I'm like, bro, like, you weren't there, and it's one of those things. Yeah. I
Yeah,
feel
you
like I'm
just
blowing up with questions now.
yeah. What do we got?
Okay. Um, was he
And I'm a
active?
thirsty girl, guys. Sorry, I drink so much
No,
water.
you're fine. I'm addicted to nicotine. Um, no.
We all have our things.
Did did he openly do steroids?
Yeah, I knew he was on a little bit of testosterone. I came from a background of like big fitness industry, so that was super common.
Yeah.
And I've seen people be fairly normal on it.
Yeah.
So I didn't necessarily associate it with the explosiveness. I don't think it helps.
Yeah,
And I
I
was
didn't either.
communicated to me that it was like very low, like for maintenance. And I know that when he went to jail, like it really messed him up. And so he was trying to rebound or whatever, you know. So I didn't think a lot about it. We didn't even talk about it that much.
Hmm.
He just gave the impression that it was like super low and whatever.
Yeah, it was
But I
just
had been around
he said that
before, so it wasn't.
he said that his testosterone I'm not going to get the numbers right of the
Yeah,
span, right? But say if like a normal man has their testosterone is 400, his was like 23. And that
yep,
there's like a lot of things that I wasn't aware of because I didn't come from that life. You'd be overly sleepy and you wouldn't have your strength, just like mental health, like all of these things. And
yes,
so when I thought about steroids, I thought about steroids that are like illegal and that you don't have a prescription from Walgreens for. When I found out that like Boston doctor, Dr. Sean, like was the one prescribing it and he was an endocrinologist, I was like, oh, okay, like this is not bad. Like this is like you're taking a vitamin. This is, like something like that.
and he relayed that to me like more and more. So that triggered a memory also, of course. So I was feeling like a lot of like symptoms of like what I thought was hormonal imbalance. It might have been of the period of my life where I was feeling horribly traumatized and unhappy,
Yeah.
contributing to a lot of that, you know, where it's like really sleepy, starting to feel really depressed, anxious. I feel like my body composition was not good. My cortisol was super high, but it could have very well also been my environment. And then he introduced me to a woman that he knew was a friend who was doing hormone therapy. And she was telling me how much it changed her life. She feels so much better, all of these things, and it's from doctors. So I actually ended up doing it for a little while too. And initially I did feel better. I got off of it because I think it ended up doing more harm than good.
Yeah.
And I forgot that that was actually that he introduced me to that period of my life. Yeah, also, that's so crazy. Totally forgot until right now because I haven't been involved in any of that for few years. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
that's
I,
so
I mean, I
weird.
had never ordered anything off of like an online pharmacy in a different country and injected it into my body before him. But sure as
Yeah,
shit, moved in and I'm like, "Oh, wait, I can get HCG over the interwebs? Like what?" Like, and then I
yeah,
wasn't afraid of needles anymore because I'm not constantly seeing,
yeah.
yeah, he really did kind of, it was enabling. It was a gateway to
What else
making that
can I
stuff
never do?
normal.
Yeah, yeah. It's so that's so weird. And mine was like ended up being from a doctor in Arizona, but they ended up like ghosting me. It was very caused a lot of problems for me, unfortunately. But
Gosh, I
yeah.
can't imagine when you're already feeling some type of way hormonally. I mean, you're probably like depressed because I felt the exact
Oh,
same way
yeah,
because I was being literally abused in every single fashion.
yeah.
Um,
And then on top of manipulating your hormones, on top of that, it just like made it
yeah,
worse.
let's hijack your genome. God.
Yes.
So did he ever pack up and leave and you didn't know where he was?
Not really packing up and leaving. I kind of like I knew where he would go. He would pack up and leave, but it was like going to work. Or he would be in a bad mood and he wouldn't like he's like I'm going to the gym or whatever, but he wouldn't like up and leave like overnight anywhere. But at that point he didn't like have to hide it from me because I thought he was training people.
Did he have a car?
You know, oh my god, this is so excellent. I found out that I thought he had a car, but actually Matt provided him with the truck that he had. And when they got into one of their BFs, um, he took the car back and he wouldn't tell me why or what happened. I was like, if it's your car, why would he take it? I don't understand.
Oh my gosh.
Like, what? So there was a period where he did not have a car there, and I was like, what? And then he was going to get a car eventually, and this is also the period where he was trying to not eat fruits and vegetables and just eat powder, and just getting to a really weird place that I also didn't like. And like, this was not the life I was looking to have, obviously. And he found this car online, and it was like the smallest little clown car that
The smart car? The smart car. Can you fucking?
okay,
I've
so
never
I'm just
seen him
like,
in this car, but when Kyle talks
was it?
about
It's
him
like a
trading
spark or
the smart
something.
car in, I'm like, he's so big. How did he fit?
And I was trying to be supportive, but I was like, I'm so embarrassed because this is not masculine of you. Like, I understand. Like, I'm not trying to be judgy, but I'm like, I didn't imagine like the man of my dreams was going to be driving this little like tiny like little cubicle, and the one thing that bothered me too, I was like, well, you need a car. Like, why haven't you gone and paid for it yet? He was only getting it for like $3,000. I'm like, just go pay for the car.
Yeah.
And who knows what funny business he probably was trying to get someone to pay for it, and that was being delayed, is what I was thinking now, because he was kind of like hesitantly responding on why he didn't go and take care of it.
Hmm.
I'm like, just you said that it's yours, go get it. Like, why haven't you gotten it yet? It was weird. As with around this time, I was noticing a lot of weird things.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
the finance piece, right, has to becoming a little bit more clear because so now you're moving in, and correct me if I'm wrong, but he had his own one bedroom apartment at this apartment complex. You guys moved into a different one. Was it still one bedroom?
it was a two-bedroom on a corner unit.
Two bedroom on the corner. That's so funny because later on, I he moved me there in a two bedroom corner unit
Were you on the first floor?
on the first floor.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Dude, wait, what? On the first floor?
yeah.
With a
Towards like the backside corner, like in the front, you go to the right. It was like over there.
Oh my God, that's so
Were
weird.
you in the same unit or what?
I don't even remember the number now that I honestly I know I had a three.
I ended up finding out you guys moved there because one of my friends, I think, had him on Snapchat. Because later down the road, I'll tell you I found all these things, right? But he added him and he's like, hey, I think Dick lives down the street. I was like, what? I didn't know you guys had moved back
Yeah.
yet. And that was one of the things I felt safe for because I didn't think he lived here anymore. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, no, yeah, he's on Snap Maps. Like, a few blocks away. I was like, no way. So they drove by, and I think that they saw him or something at some point in the lot. And I was like, good to know. I'm glad, but that's where we lived. Like what?
That
Because then you find out also that he didn't pay for anything
oh
to
my
be there.
goodness.
I'm like, how is this possible?
I don't know how it was possible that we were allowed to move in there, and the only he was on the lease with me. I was the main person. But after finding out all of the financial stuff and I knew that you guys had lived there together. And I was
Mm-hmm.
I you know like I didn't really care. I was like whatever. And at this point I had given up all control. Like I was like it was like my saving grace because I never wanted to live in Las Vegas. So I was like, all right, move me to where
Mm-hmm.
you want to move so that you're happy. Pick it out. Like I'm good. Like you're being the man and leading us. And he was gassing it up like, oh, it's got a tanning bed and I'm like, I don't give a fuck. Or it's Nevada. We don't need a tanning bed. Like all of these things. Never used the pool one time. um he was saying all of these things about how it was, oh, it's such an affluent part of town and blah 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 blah. It's just like being in North Scottsdale. I moved there. There was more people, homeless people, walking through those gates than I've ever experienced in my life. And like, I'm from Chicago, and I'm like, what do you mean? Like this? He's like, oh, it's changed so much. Cars being repossessed out of the parking lot, one of which was his
Yeah,
eventually. Like just crazy, crazy shit. Um, but so you are now, you have to sign a lease, right? With him? You didn't?
I never signed on the
Oh
lease.
God, you're so lucky.
He took care of it.
Wow.
And I forgot to mention too, but or well, I was going to mention to you earlier when I shared information with you. I think I sent you the picture. It said his name and something. So you have to go back and look. It was like 4 or 5 letters. So it may have been someone else also, or an LLC, or I have no idea. I don't know how that works, but it was like one of those attention to his name and it wasn't mine. I don't know how I didn't notice it before, but I noticed it when I went and reviewed some stuff before we spoke
It was in, oh, like,
this time.
wait, way back when?
Yeah,
Oh, I'll have to go and look.
yeah, yeah. Because I was before we set this up, I went back and did some screenshots because if I had had more time, I would have, if there was a way to, put up images as we spoke to kind of illustrate some things that would be an interesting piece people would appreciate. And
Not
I'd be
for
like,
the
well,
live, but I potentially could do
yeah,
this for the recorded version.
yeah,
Sorry for the people listening on Apple and Spotify, but go to YouTube. Um,
yeah. So you mentioned you guys would end up going. There's no real easy transition to this, but it's not a big deal. But you guys would end up going and traveling and do things. We were like, we don't have any money. How are we doing
oh my
this?
God, yeah.
Right. So we had one of those moments too. We went to Mexico, and he ended up. It was weird. It was like we're talking about how it feels like the phones are always listening. We're like, hey, we should go on this. We want to go on this vacation, all inclusive, super cheap, blah blah blah. Because everything after COVID was actually a little bit cheaper. But it was like we can't. Like I was like, can't do that. We're just like joking.
Yeah.
And then like within the week, he ends up being like, hey, I found this deal. We should go on a trip. Like Mexico, I think is open. We can go and use their gym, do all these things. And I'm like stressed. I'm like, okay, like that sounds like fun, but like,
We don't
I'm
have
like,
money.
we don't have any money. Like,
Mhm.
what do you mean? Like these things that are supposed to be taken care of are not being taken care of. You're trying to eat powdered vegetables. And I'm just like, how are we going to go on an international vacation? This doesn't make any sense. He's like, no, don't worry. He's like, I'm going to be like, mentions the gambling. Like, it's like, we're doing good. Everything's going to be fine. It's not expensive. It's all inclusive. And I'm like, okay. So I believe he booked our flights for that. Or I might have had points on mine, but I'm pretty sure he booked it. I don't remember. I don't want to missay.
Yeah.
Um, we go, and I was kind of looking forward to it, but like once we're leaving, but at the same time, like stressed because it's like, where's the financial stability? I can't incur any expenses. I've already taken on more credit card debt. Like things are not getting paid for the way they're supposed to. I'm stressed, and I'm not doing the online work that I was because he was supposed to be taking these things on. And that was supposed to be the only thing preventing him at this point.
Mm-hmm.
We, go, we have to connect in, we get there, drive. It was a long, long day's journey. We go to check in, he's going to check us in, and they're like, okay, we need a credit card. And he's like, I don't have one. He's like, you have to put your card down. And I was like, no, I was like, what? No, I can't. I can't. I can't. He's like, I was like, don't you have a card? Can't you? So he's like, I don't have one. He's like, I don't have a credit card. There's no way. He's like, if you don't do it, we have to leave. And I'm like, what? He's like, you don't have, he's like, don't worry. He's like, it's not like I'm going to make you pay for it. He's like, when we check out, he's like, I'll pay for everything. He's like, I can do that, right? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, and for me, that was really triggering. Like, I'm like, I can't take on this more responsibility. Like, it's stressful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, but I'm like, he's like, it's like, if you don't, like, we have to fly home.
Right. You
And I'm
have
like,
no option.
he's like, yeah, it's like, you do this or we fly home,
Mm-hmm.
which we don't have a new flight for.
Right. Because he
Probably have to
doesn't
pay to
do
change
that.
it,
He doesn't book round trips. Mm-mm.
So I'm like, okay. He's like, I'm going to take care of it at the end. You don't need to worry. And I'm like, okay, I begrudgingly do it because I'm like, what? I'm going to be stranded here in Mexico with no place to stay now too. And we're there, this is actually, the trip was weird. The culture still was very weird around COVID and kind of sketchy. There's not people around.
Mm-hmm.
Found out the gym wasn't open and it was very quiet. So he was kind of in a bad mood also.
Ugh.
And he's obsessed with ping pong.
Oh my God.
And
He's so weird. I don't fucking get the obsession with ping pong. I
yeah, ping pong, we ended up playing and recording. I ended up recording us that day playing in a time lapse. And in that moment was the first time I discovered he even used Skype.
oh.
I had never known. He never had one notification, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
He like accidentally left it. I've never been weird about phone stuff. Like, as I'm like, if I'm in a relationship, especially with my soulmate, like I don't have anything to hide.
Right.
You can use it, whatever. But I never didn't feel inclined earlier on to ever check anything. And he leaves his phone open on accident on the table, and I see clear as day. He has like 8 conversations open on Skype, and I'm like,
You know that's his
what?
Bible.
Right.
He's got
So I'm
he's
just
got
like,
close to 10,000 contacts in Skype.
right. Exactly. Okay. So to my surprise, having never seen not one Skype notification, never once hearing he used it, nothing. To my surprise, you're having like 8 open, active, like bubble notifications, new notifications with conversations with people.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't say anything right then. It was one of those mental notes. I'm like, because I don't want to explode. I'm like, okay, we're gonna do some research because I was already getting suspicious of some things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, he had to like up and leave. Also, it was around this time, might have been right before. But I saw that, I was like, okay, mental note. And I did ask him, I think it was maybe later that night or something. I was like, so obviously I saw you Skype, like, what is that for? I was just like, what is that for? He's like, yeah. He's like, it's for my clients. He's like, I've had thousands of clients on there. I always talk to them on there.
Well, he
Made me
wasn't
sound
lying.
like, no, he wasn't. Technically he wasn't. Right? But he made me feel like I was the idiot for even asking. Like, obviously I talked to them on there. Like that. And I was like, okay.
Honestly, like Skype is a very
But I'm like,
1990s of you, bro. But like I
yeah.
understand.
But if that's the case and that's what you do for work, especially now, why is it the first time it's ever been opened in front of me ever?
Because
Never even saw the
it
app
was
on
an
his phone.
accident. It was never supposed to happen.
Of course, because he like very casually went over and checked something on his phone and closed it, but I knew what he was doing. I knew he was hiding.
Yeah.
Like, obviously. I was like, this is in July, and I was like, at this point, like, I already know some weirdness is happening, questioning a lot of stuff. But I'm still like, haven't stepped out and still like love this person.
Yeah.
And so and there still wasn't something huge. Like, there was the biggest issue I had was, how he obviously spoke to me when we got into tiffs,
Mm-hmm.
and him not aligning his actions with his words. And that was very difficult. So I was also being the woman I said I would be in this relationship, and he was not. So that was hard, but it wasn't like, boom, I just caught him with another woman or somebody. that would have been like the ends all for me.
I think that
And
that's the end all for all of us, and we
yeah,
um wrongly compare what's going on actively with that and minimize the damage that the things that are happening in our life. Like, yeah, he's not cheating. I didn't catch him in a gangbang. Yeah, dude, but like also that is like earth-shattering, apocalyptic. No one should ever do that. Duh.
yeah,
Like that's how your
yes,
brain works in that moment.
yeah. I should have stepped away when the words didn't align with actions. But
Mhm.
there was not always, but there's many things that I was like, lockdowns. You can't control that, neither can I.
Yeah.
Can't leave somebody for that. He's upset, he's stressed. All these things. So, um, yeah, gotten like more fights about like I've got another big fight at the end of that month after we got back because he said afterwards he was going to start taking care of stuff again.
Hmm.
He wanted me to sign up for Lifetime, or I had signed up for wanted me to sign up for Lifetime, and I started training people a little bit there. But when I signed up, like he's like, I'll pay for your membership. He's like, just sign up online, we'll go in, we'll take care of
Yeah,
it. I'm
me
like,
too.
okay.
He tried to do that.
I'm like, oh, they made it. He's like, yeah. He was like, he's like, oh, they made me put a card down to like sign up or something like that, or I don't remember what it was exactly. And he's like, I'll take care of it when we get there. Don't worry. I was like, okay. We go in, we sign up, do the consult like together, and they sign me up, and then they ask for a card, and he just doesn't do anything. He doesn't even look at me, and I'm like, well, this would be so embarrassing. Like, what am I gonna do? But like, hey, aren't you gonna pay for this in
Yeah.
front of the person at the gym? You know what I mean? So I'm like, okay, like I'll just like.
It's always
He's
like you
like,
just reach for your wallet.
he's like, just take care of it.
I got it.
Yeah, he's like, just
Yeah.
yeah. He's like, just do it. I'll get you later. And I'm like, I didn't like that, but I'm not gonna have an embarrassing like fight in front of this person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not even a fight because I'm not the one who goes and screams. I'm just like, hey, like you said, you're taking care of this, like, and make it embarrassing for that person who has no idea what's going on. So I do it, and I'm upset about that. And then like a week or so later, he's like, I found this new gym, blah blah blah, and he was going to EOS or something. He's like, this would be so great. And like now I'm started training people at Lifetime to make money
Hmm.
because I need to find more ways to make money.
Yeah, right.
And then he was like, oh, you're gonna love it, blah blah, blah. I was like, oh, I'm so happy for you, like I'm glad you found a place that you like, whatever. And oh, he's like, oh, for like us, he's like, I'm not paying like $3,000 a year to be at Lifetime. And I'm like, what? Like, this is where I train people now, like what? He's a trainer with house. I'm like, but these are clients, this is where they go, like they're not gonna come home and do it there. But I'm like, I don't understand, you said you're gonna take care of this.
Hmm.
He's like, I'm not paying for that, like I'm not responsible for you. He's like, I need to save my money, take care of these things. You're not the priority. Like, not saying you're not the priority, but he's like, I'm not what's important. And I'm just like, what? like
Oh God.
like what? You just said like a week ago that you're going to do this.
Him with the gym
And it
hopping is
was,
something that I think is so fucking crazy. When we were in Las Vegas, he was on Lifetime, and we used to go back and forth between Summerlin and Green Valley Ranch. And I wasn't really
yeah.
sure why he wanted to go to one versus the other at different times. Um, but then it was like, oh, but maybe sometimes I'm going to go to Fit Club. Or maybe another time, oh, you know what, Amanda? Like, all the UFC players, they go to Project Wellbeing, and I have to start biohacking because Grant Cardone does it. And so we have to pay $500 a person to go there, $1,000 a month. We have to because we'll die later because we're reverse
Mm-hmm.
aging. Everything always had it. But I mean, $1,000 a month, the rent at that place was
Crazy.
probably, I think it was maybe 26, 20, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I literally am in the most amount of debt. His car's gone, and
Not cheap when you have no money,
it was always a priority. It was
right?
always a priority, the next biggest thing, but it always was in relationship to well-being and fitness, and you you're gonna come at me for taking care of my body? Like,
Like, what can you say to that?
yeah, it's it's really insane. I can't believe I actually did really I love Project Wellbeing. I love it. It was very cool to go there, and I love hyperbaric oxygen and all of that. It's an amazing experience. Um,
I've heard of it, but I haven't gone yet. So
Oh,
I'm
you
like,
have to go.
it's a large gym fee. Like I like a nice gym, but I'm like, it's a lot more to add.
It's very like state of the art, and they have like a recovery spa, so they have all of it. They have the mineral soak and the cold plunge, red light, sauna.
Amazing.
Yeah, we'll just tag them down below. No. No,
Yeah.
they're so great, and I do, and they're really great over there. But it was an amazing gym, but it costs
Yeah.
what it should, and we shouldn't have been able to afford that. We couldn't afford that, and that aided and ultimately led to where we end up. But um, I'm looking to see if we missed
I
any
had
of
a
these questions because I'm like, oh, did he ever say comments
the,
about he how he was better than everyone else, or like beat his chest and was like, I'm the best?
oh my god, like
Yeah, I'm the best at
yep,
this. Yeah.
yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, literally.
Just like
The
that, right?
scream. It's always the holler. Yes,
Hmm.
yes. Like yes. Oh, well, often actually. So if he won money, if he was right about something, if he was like feeling like he's about to go get her about something,
Hmm.
yes, there was the chest beat and the scream, and he's like, "Ooh, I'm the best."
Um, did his voice ever bother you?
No, because people always made fun of me for having a deep voice,
Hmm.
and it also just didn't bother me anyway.
It didn't bother me
Like I don't know.
either. I don't.
Yeah, I didn't think anything of it. Like it's not weird. I don't
I
know.
actually think it's more weird when people are like, "Oh, Amanda, like your gaydar is way off. Like you should have known." And I'm like, "Bro, please, like, stop it." Like that's the most like unintelligent thing I've ever heard anybody say, but so many people say it. Like you should have known. That should have been
I
that
experienced that
flag
too.
was flagging. And I'm like, not to me. I liked it kind of. I liked that he had a lisp. I thought it was
Yeah,
adorable.
I actually said that. I said he had a lisp. He didn't like that I said that, but I'm like, it's cute, and he was like, but he. I told him one time I was like, no, I like your voice, like as it came up, and I was like, doesn't. There's nothing wrong. He's like, oh, people made fun of me for it a lot. It's like, it doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
When he came to meet my family for the first time in August, and my parents were like okay with him ish, you know. My grandparents were cool with him. My grandma thought he was cute, you
Hmm.
know. We spent a lot of time talking to my grandma and stuff, and my grandpa because he was a war vet and had a lot of interesting stories. My sister didn't like him, thought he was gay, didn't like his voice. Well, just wasn't a fan. She's like, I don't like him. There's something I don't like him. So
Intuition.
yeah,
No.
and
Yeah.
you know, that was one incident. Also, around this time, we ended up going to the Boston guy. I was supposed, you know how you were. So when you told me some of these things, I was like, wow, this happened to me too. But I was supposed to go to Boston with him to go get like the Botox laser treatments. Like he was going to trade training for him and do all of these things. Come time,
Yeah.
I wasn't able to go.
Oh, I was
I was
promised
like,
the
what?
exact same thing for free.
And then he just like, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, no, next time he just wants to get this out of the way, whatever. The sleep number came shortly after that.
Oh, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I didn't even think. I honestly thought that that was a Phoenix thing, but now that I think about it, I'm like, he didn't say that he moved that. And you were like, were you like, how the fuck do we have an $11,000 bed?
I think he said he had to get a new one. Like, I don't remember why. It was probably, he said, with gambling winnings. I don't know that he said that someone else paid for it. Because then that would have been a little like, who paid for this? Why?
Yeah.
You know, because he told me that that guy was training, like he was paying, trading training for the free services.
You know, I found an email. I found lots of emails, but from this specific person after Dick had ghosted, blocked, just fucked him over in some capacity. I found an email that was forwarded to Dick from Dr. Sean that said, and it was Dr. Sean emailing Sleep Number because he had financed the bed. It wasn't bought outright. I believe
Yeah.
seriously that he's still paying on it, which is bewildering. But the email said, like, to whom it may concern, I want to know how I can get off of this lease. My boyfriend and I broke up, and he has the bed in his possession. Boyfriend? The fuck are you talking? I was like, It was one of those moments because I have never heard anybody say that about him. And then I was
Yeah,
like, oh my gosh, he really did think he thought that. Maybe he was.
they genuinely.
I feel bad. I mean, I felt bad for that person. I don't really anymore, but
Yeah, yeah, right. Because I'm sure he knew that there was deceit going on, here. So
yeah.
yeah. Oh, another one of the things that made me. We're getting close to like the grand finale of me finding everything out, and that's quite the moment.
Yeah.
But before that, it was like a week. It was a week out from that, and I had talked to my girlfriend, who's a psychologist. She's one of my friends I've been training, and she's one of my best friends even now too. And she really helped me kind of bounce the be reasonable and bounce things back and forth, and be like, hey, like, should I be dealing with this? Blah blah. Should It's like, I don't know, because I just all these things. She really helped talk me through stuff, and I was ready. I was like, okay, you really can't be with this person anymore.
Hmm.
Was how I was feeling, which was hard because like my heart still really cared about this person, but I was like, I can't be treated like this. This person isn't taking care of me the way they said. Like the hostility that's happening, that's just not acceptable, you know. But had no like job. It's in this place. Like, what am I gonna do? Like, what am I
Girl,
supposed to do?
twins, same.
And yeah, yeah. So then I'm like, well, at least I'm training people. I had a few clients, and that would help. But it was not going to mend. So it was a band-aid on the circumstances, So I was like, okay, I need to find a way, and I decided. I actually got in trouble for training people at Lifetime by the management at Lifetime. Because I wasn't like I wasn't doing it through them. I was just like working out with people to
Yeah,
train
yeah,
them.
yeah.
And but it was kind of funny because instead of them being like, "Oh, it's so bad," they're like, "Do you want a job?"
That's
Because they're
hilarious.
like, "You look like you know what you're
Yeah.
doing." I was like, "Tell me more." So it's like, okay. I ended up downloading like the course and everything for it, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna start. This is gonna be my exit plan. Um, and this was still hard because I was so in love with this person, but just so hurt by this person. It was a very hard place to be. But a week before I really found things out, he did something that made me really see that I think this person is capable of being dangerous. So I really don't know who this person is. So he liked the UFC stuff, and he was kind of practicing the UFC stuff. I ended up getting him even gloves and stuff for his birthday, among other
Mhm.
things. And so he was like kind of actively practicing a little bit, not with like a coach or anything that I was aware that he wasn't doing with the coach, I don't think, but just practicing at the gym and all of that. But you know how there are partners like if you play fight, or they might grab
Yeah.
you and like jump on the bed or whatever. And in any of those circumstances, if they like actually hurt you, like they like apologize
Hmm.
and like, oh God, like are you okay? They care, right? So he wanted to show me this move, and he does this move on it me, but instead of like walking me through it, he actually does it, and he really hurts me. He like picks me up and like underneath my ribs, like slams me like on like by the counter in the ground in the kitchen, and I'm like, I'm like screaming because it really hurts, and I was like
Hardwood floor.
thinking, yeah, like very painful. I was very scared because he literally just actually hurt
Hmm.
me, doing an actual UFC move on me. And I like look at him like, oh my God, like saying like, I'm like, that hurt. And then he just keeps talking, and there's nothing in his eyes, no remorse, no soul, absolutely nothing. And he keeps talking about like the move and then this and da 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 da. And I'm just like, in the moment, I'm just like waiting. I'm like, he doesn't care.
He's not gonna
He actually has no
apologize.
remorse. I saw
Yeah.
that was the moment I was like, this person is dangerous.
Hmm.
I was like, how does your person actually cause you an injury and doesn't care? Nothing. There's nothing. Wasn't his problem. Didn't acknowledge it. Didn't try to see if I was okay. And I was so scared, like holding myself, looking at him.